Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 2057. And tonight we are genealogy detectives. How to solve a family history mystery. Say that 3 times fast. Sorry, I just tweaked my neck as we went live, so I apologize for that. And that's probably going to hurt for a little bit. But anyway, let's go in and have a look and see what mysteries we can solve. And we even have some real life examples for you too. Pretty cool, huh? So my question for you this evening is, have you ever come across a mystery in your family tree, an ancestor who vanished, a name that didn't match, or a missing record? I don't have a detective hat. I need to get me a detective hat. Let's put on our detective hats and uncover the truth. Yeah, let's see. I've got my tiara here and that's about it. I gotta take a note. Detective hat. And magnifying glass. I have magnifying glasses somewhere. I think that one might be down in the bedroom. Anyway, so genealogy is like a puzzle, and sometimes a piece just doesn't quite fit. Maybe a great-grandparent appears out of nowhere in the records, or an ancestor's last name keeps changing. I actually have a real-life example of that actually happens. That's actually happening in my tree. When I was looking for a cousin, she told me the story of her father or her grandfather, who kept changing names and would use the he would have his first name, but he would change the last name to the maiden name of his wife. And I think he might have been married a couple of times, been married twice at the same time. There's just a whole bunch of stuff going on there. And then on the other side of the scale, we have a mystery as to why, let's see, my 7th cousins who live in Wales have a great-grandmother who changed her name and nobody knows why. Just changed her first name. Nobody knows why. Anyway, tonight we're diving into real-life genealogy mysteries and sharing expert tips on how to track down missing ancestors. Woohoo! Fun fact, in the 1800s, some people changed their names just to avoid debts, making genealogy research extra tricky. But they can be found. How, you ask? You'll have to stay tuned to find out. So in the case of a name change, common reasons for name changes were anglicizing of foreign names, like from Schmidt to Smith, O'Donnell to Donnell, adoption, remarriage, or stepchildren taking a new last name. And when you look on census reports as well, you will see that in some cases, the children may have the same name as the head of the house, who is typically the husband. They may have his same name on there, but in the how are they related to the head of the house, it has stepson, stepdaughter, but they don't have their original name there. So then you have to try and figure out what was their original name. Who's this wife he's married? You can find it through marriage records, find out what her name was before she got married, and then look up and see if you can find records for the kids. There's a whole way of unraveling things. And so on census reports, you may find that even though they're listed as stepchildren, they have their last name as the same as the head of the house. In some cases, they actually did put the original name of the stepchildren. Intentional identity changes to escape the law or a troubled past. In some cases, you will find women would leave town after a divorce because divorce was frowned upon kind of still is in some cultures. But divorce was frowned upon, and the woman was looked at the person at fault, even if the husband was the one that had cheated on her. And it came out in the case, she was to blame for the divorce because she wasn't keeping him interested enough at home because he wandered away. So it was her fault, and she was then, in some cases, ostracized from the rest of the town. People wouldn't talk to her; they would basically bully her. And so the divorced woman would then leave, and in other places she'd be a widow. So there were cases of that as well. Let's see. So we've got the anglicizing the foreign names, adoption, remarriage, or stepchildren, taking a new last name. Even if they weren't formally adopted, they may take on the name of their stepdad. Intentional identity changes to escape the law or troubled past. And for example, a man named Antonio Russo in 1905 changed his name to Anthony Ross after immigrating to the US, making him hard to trace in early census records. So unless you knew what he had changed his name to, it could be very difficult. A researcher looking for Jacob Kowalski couldn't find him until she realized he had changed his name to James Wallace after moving to America. Notice both of them say that after they immigrated to the US or moved to America. It was not Ellis Island where their names were changed. No, they came in on the papers that they had to present, and then after they got into the country, then they changed their name. You have the case of the disappearing. Sorry, I don't know what on my desk here. Very gritty. The disappearing ancestor mystery. So possible explanations could be women sometimes vanished due to marriage, records listing them under their husband's name. And like you will see that in a lot of newspapers reports that would have Mrs. Jacob Smith. Well, there's about 20 Jacob Smiths in that town. Which one did she belong to? What was her name before they got married? You're going to find that. Census takers occasionally skipped homes or recorded incorrect information. A lot of the times, if the person in the house didn't know how to read and write, they didn't know how to spell their name. So then the enumerator wrote down what they thought they heard, especially if they had an accent. A researcher's great-grandfather seemed to disappear from Chicago in 1910 census. After digging, she found that he moved to Canada for work and later returned to the US under a different spelling of his name. Another example, a Civil War soldier was listed in 1860 but missing in 1870. His family assumed he died in the war, but research showed he had actually survived, moved to Texas, and remarried under a different name. I tell you, there's some strange things. The hidden adoption or the family secret. Signs of a hidden adoption or unknown parentage. Birth certificates list unknown father or NR for not recorded on inconsistent birth locations. Older siblings raising younger ones, a clue that parents may have passed. Family stories that don't add up about a child's origin. This is very common, especially if there is a mystery surrounding the birth of the child. Who was the actual parent? Was it the grandmother, as was written on the birth certificate, with a not recorded father? And in some cases, in some countries, they would actually stamp bastard on the birth entry to show that this child was born out of wedlock. Another clue that a child was born out of wedlock, in some places, when you went to register the birth, you were not allowed to put the father's name unless the couple were married. So if the husband and wife were married, the husband's name went on the birth certificate, even if he may not have been the birth father of that child. If the woman was unmarried, they were not allowed to put who the father was. So he was not allowed to be recorded. I had one case there with a client, and on the birth certificate for her father, we knew, no, not her father, it was her mother. We knew that the mother and the father had been living together for a while, but had never gotten married, and they actually had 2 daughters together. On both birth certificates, there is no father recorded, except the father is the one who reported the births. So he put on there that his name is on the birth certificate, but not as the father, but as the witness to the birth. And when they asked how he had knowledge of the birth, he said he was present at birth. And that's how they got his name on the birth certificate. So there were little workarounds that they had. Another example is a researcher's great-grandfather seemed to disappear from Chicago in 1910 census. After digging, she found that one, we already did that one, sorry. Oh my goodness, crossing my eyes on my notes. Oh, yeah. We're talking about hidden adoption or family secrets. Right, back to the family secrets. A woman took a DNA test and found out her grandfather had been secretly adopted, a truth hidden for over 80 years. And yes, DNA tests will bring up all sorts of skeletons those skeletons will be coming out of the bushes, out of the closets. They will be appearing because all of a sudden you may get if you're doing an ancestry DNA match or in 23andMe or Family Tree DNA, and you contact somebody you have a DNA match with, and you say you're trying to figure out, how you are connected to stuff. It could be that, You might have some half siblings out there you didn't know about, and all of a sudden you're confronted with these half siblings and, oh, the stories you've been told are not true. Or you know the stories, but the family who contacts you don't know that you are a half sibling because they didn't know about any extramarital affairs. A researcher discovered that her great-grandmother, who she thought was an only child, had actually been adopted by relatives after her parents died, and she had 6 biological siblings she never knew about. That is just awesome. To discover you suddenly have this family you didn't know about. Yes, but this was an in-family adoption, so why they didn't tell her about her 6 siblings, who knows? Have you ever had to solve a missing ancestor mystery? Yeah, let us know in the comments below. Research tips for solving family tree puzzles, because they are puzzles and we've got our little detective hats on. When records don't add up, try these detective strategies. Search for alternate names and phonetic variations. Census takers and record keepers misspelled names frequently, so try different spellings. And we already had that one. Researcher looking for Jacob Kowalski. For some reason, I've got it in here twice. Don't ask me why. Couldn't find him until she realized he had changed his name to James Wallace after he moved to America. So even things like that. I've got my mother-in-law's name. I think last count I have like 27 different variations of spelling. Hang on, what's going on here? My screen just went blank. You guys still there? Hello, can you see me? My screen just went blank. Oh, here it is. It's back again. So I have, last I counted, I have 27 different variations for spelling her last name. And on some of the things when you're researching, they'll have a SoundX box. Check the SoundX box because the SoundX will start looking for different variations that sound like this. Sounds like the name that you've got written there. So try that, look for them, keep your eyes open for them because you never know where they will appear. Look beyond census and birth records. Look at city directories. If a census record is missing, check old phone books and address lists. Land deeds and property records. Sometimes family members bought and sold land together. Sometimes you had to have other people witnessing the signing of the land deeds who were not related to that family. Or and look for probate records too is another one because they may be listed in probate, and they may be listed in probate as an heir to that family, or they may be listed shown in probate as the witness to the will, but not named as a beneficiary of the will. So look for those too. Old newspapers, birth, marriage, and deaths, and even legal trouble might be documented in a newspaper article. A woman looking for her great aunt's birth record couldn't find it until a newspaper birth announcement from 1920 confirmed her birth in a neighboring county. Remember, county lines changed. So they may have been looking in the right area, just they were looking in the wrong county because they were looking to see what town that county belonged in today. But back in 1920, that town was actually in a different county. So keep an eye open for that. When you're looking for locations and things, look to see where that town is located. What county is it in? What's the county line? Look to see and put in there what in 1920, what county did such and such town belong to, and it will tell you. So that it may be the same county or it could be a different county. So look out for that. DNA testing as a clue to hidden ancestry. Matches with unexpected relatives could indicate a name change, an adoption, or a non-paternal event. Non-paternal event meaning they didn't get put on the birth certificate. It can bring up long-lost siblings, cousins, and even unknown biological parents. For example, a man in his 70s took a DNA test and discovered he had a half-sister he never knew existed. I was reading one about a guy today who was in his 60s. Was in his 60s when he discovered his birth parents, and but not only did he find his birth parents, he found out because he was given up for adoption because his parents weren't married at the time, but he was given up for adoption. After his adopted parents passed away, he then went looking for his birth family. he found his birth parents had actually married and gone on and had 4 other children. So he had 4 full siblings he didn't know existed. And his birth father had passed away, but his birth mother was still alive. So he got to know her for a few years before she passed. And he still goes and visits with his sisters. With his sisters, did he was all sisters or brothers and sisters? He goes and visits with his siblings often and has gotten to know his nieces and nephews and everything else. A woman researching her family history was shocked when DNA showed she was related to a completely different surname. Turns out her great-grandfather was adopted and never knew it. The great-grandfather didn't know. Nobody in the family knew that he had been adopted. If you are stuck, research the FAN club. Remember, FAN is for friends, associates, and neighbors. Sometimes an ancestor is listed in someone else's record. Also check to, it just went out of my head. Hang on, let's see if I can get it back. We're talking about the friends, associates, and neighbors. If you're looking at census reports, they could have been in a different location during the census. They may not be with their family on that census. They could be somewhere else. They could be visiting somebody else. They could be visiting a sibling. They could be visiting parents. They could be visiting with an aunt and uncle or grandparents. So look for those names as well, because if you're looking for their friends, associates, and neighbors and other family members, you may find that person that you're looking for on the census report is at somebody else's house. They're visiting somebody else, or that person is visiting somebody else. Everybody else is left at home. Okay, so here's some famous genealogy mysteries that were solved. Some of history's greatest mysteries were cracked with genealogy. The Titanic's unknown child, a baby who perished on the Titanic, was unidentified for decades. In 2002, DNA testing revealed he was Sidney Leslie Goodwin, a British child traveling with his parents. The case of Lizzie Borden's hidden family. Lizzie Borden, famously accused of killing her parents, had relatives who tried to distance themselves from the scandals. Some changed their last names. The Romanov family's lost heir. Oh my gosh, this story, I have followed this story for years. With the Russian royal family was executed in 1918, but for years, rumors swirled that Anastasia had survived. In 2007, DNA confirmed the Romanovs' remains, finally solving the mystery. I have seen different movies creating that story. I have read books about that story, about how the family were overtaken. They were all shot, and Anastasia supposedly survived. And when she was able to answer questions about the family, but she refused, whenever asked and whenever spoken to in Russian, she refused to ever speak her native tongue, whether it was because she didn't know any Russian or because she really, and I thought maybe she really is Anastasia, she just doesn't want to speak it. But I thought, if you really were that person, surely you would go and speak the language, even if it did hurt you emotionally wise, but whatever. There were some parts of her story I believe that maybe she could be, and other parts of the story where I believe, yeah, that sounds a little far-fetched. I don't think so. But then I remembered Mark Twain's thing that sometimes truth is stranger than fiction because fiction has to make sense. If you could solve any genealogy mystery, what would it be? Let us know in the comments. Genealogy mysteries make researching exciting, and sometimes the answers are just waiting to be found. So your challenge, pick a missing ancestor and try a new strategy to find them. If you've solved a genealogy mystery, share your biggest breakthrough with us in the comments below. Every family has a mystery waiting to be solved. Some have more than one. There are mysteries throughout the ages. Every family has a mystery waiting to be solved, whether it's a missing ancestor, a name change, or a long-lost family branch. Keep digging. The answers are out there. So with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening. Go solve a mystery. Go look. Another thing that can help you too is put people onto a spreadsheet, especially if they have the same name. And then you can put, okay, I found this person on the 1940 census. This is their information here. But there's also this person over here that's in the same area and has the same name. Not sure if it's them or not because I don't know who the parents are. So you put their information next to that person, and then you just keep going across it. There you have all these different things, and now you've got to figure out which one fits in your tree. It's a long, laborious thing to do, but, genealogy research is a marathon. It is not a sprint. People like to get in there, oh, I want to go find this, and they get frustrated because it's taking so long to do. It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And with that, we are out of here. Go solve a family mystery, or at least find some pieces that may lead you to the solution, that when you get a little more time, you can sit down and go again and collaborate. If you've got other family members who are researching the family tree as well, get with them. Maybe them coming, they might have different perspectives on things. They might have a clue that you don't have, especially if you're working with cousins or second cousins or distant cousins to try and solve a mystery. They may have some information that you don't have. So collaborate with other researchers on your family tree to see if you can come together and find that missing relative. And with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific.